They never told him the whole story, just bits, shadows, a name here, a date there. Like his past was too dangerous to remember out loud, and when you grow up in a house like that, you learn real early that some questions don't get answered. Or maybe they just don't get asked. Isaiah Williams was 32 years old and tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix. The kind that starts somewhere deep in your chest and settles in your bones. He was a public defender in Atlanta sharp suit, calm voice, heart full of fire, but even fire dims when you've been burning. Too long. He'd been carrying something he couldn't name for most of his life, and he didn't even know where it started. You're watching Injustice Browning, and I'm Mark Joie. If you believe in truth, justice, and stories that matter, subscribe right now and leave a comment if something in this story is heavy on your soul. I want to hear from you. Now, Isaiah Dot, he grew up in a small yellow house off Joseph E. Boone Boulevard. His grandmother raised him, a woman made of discipline and gospel. Radio, who cleaned the church steps with her own hands every Saturday morning like she was washing away sins that weren't even hers. Her name was Lorraine. Folks called her Miss Lorraine out of respect, but behind her back, they said she'd seen some things. She never corrected them. Isaiah's mother, Patrice, died when he was 5. That's what they told him. Just that. No funeral, no stories, no old friends dropping by with memories. Just a framed picture above the mantel, her face young and bright, eyes full of something Isaiah would later recognize as fight. That picture watched him grow up, and he used to stare at it like it owed him answers. But Miss Lorraine never let the past get comfortable in that house. When Isaiah was 12, he asked her straight out one day, how did his mother die? She was peeling sweet potatoes in the kitchen. She paused, wiped her hands, and looked at him with eyes that had cried. All their tears years ago. It don't matter now, she said. Then she turned back to her potatoes. And just like that, the door closed again. Isaiah stopped asking after that, but it never stopped eating at him. He didn't grow up angry. He grew up with a hole in his chest. He'd walk through the world smiling, winning scholarships, shaking hands with judges, standing beside black men in orange jumpsuits who barely had anyone left to call. And still, the silence followed him. He could feel it in every courtroom where the scales weren't balanced, in every police report that smelled like fiction, in every DA who looked through his clients like they weren't even real. The same silence that erased his mother seemed to be working overtime everywhere he looked. Some nights, after court, he'd come home, take off his tie, pour a glass of water, and sit in that old living room. The picture of Patrice still hung in the same spot, and he'd just stare at it. Like if he looked long enough, maybe she'd blink, maybe she'd speak. He'd whisper to it sometimes. Just a few words. Who were you, or what did they do to you? But the house stayed quiet. Miss Lorraine was older now, slower. Her memory sharp when she wanted it to be, but soft around the edges when she didn't. And Isaiah could tell she was holding something back, something heavy, something that had swallowed her whole and never let her breathe the same again. He wanted to let it go. He really did, but something inside him wouldn't let him. And maybe it wasn't about closure anymore. Maybe it was about truth, and the simple, dangerous fact that truth doesn't stay buried forever. Not even in houses that try to forget. It came in the mail. No return address, just a manila envelope, creased at the corners. The kind that carries secrets too big for email. Isaiah almost tossed it. Looked like junk. Maybe some inmate writing from lockup, but something made him pause. The handwriting, careful, slow, like someone took their time. Inside was a letter. The paper smelled like old air and courthouse dust. The handwriting was neat, block letters. No emotion. Williams, I'm a journalist based out of Jackson, Mississippi. Wow. Researching a case from 1994, I came across documents that mention your mother, Patrice Williams. The police report was sealed. I believe there's a story here, one that was never meant to be told. If you're willing to talk, I can meet you. There's more than you've been told. A lot more. No name sign. Just a phone number with a Mississippi area code. Isaiah read it twice, then a third time. Then he folded it, slid it into his jacket pocket, and said nothing. That night, he sat across from Miss Lorraine at dinner, the same kitchen, same chipped plates, same silence. He waited until she put down her fork. I got a letter, he said, about Mama. She didn't flinch, just took a slow sip of water. A man said there's a sealed report from Mississippi. He thinks something happened in '94. Lorraine didn't look at him. She stared at the table like she could see through it, to another place, another year. You don't need to go down that road, she said. Finally, ain't nothing good at the end of it. He swallowed. But I need to know. Her voice cracked just enough to make him look up. I already know. That was all she said. The next morning, he packed a bag. Jackson felt different the moment he crossed into town. Hotter, slower, the air heavy like it was trying to keep something down. He met the journalist at an old diner off a side road. White man, early 50s, sweat-stained collar, and eyes that didn't blink much, said his name was Miles Reed. Miles laid the file on the table, like it was a live thing. He didn't open it, just pushed it forward. It was part of a sweep. He said, college students, mostly black. Your mother's name came up, but there's stuff in here that doesn't make sense. Witnesses gone, pages redacted, charges dropped, but she never came home. Isaiah opened the folder. Inside were yellowing documents, arrest reports, booking photos with no photo, court minutes with names blacked out, words like resisted, uncooperative, internal injury, no hospital record, no follow-up. Just a one-line note. Case closed. Cause, suicide in custody. His chest went tight. She was 19. And just like that, the picture on the mantel became a crime scene. The diner went quiet. Isaiah leaned back, head spinning, heart loud in his ears. Something had happened to his mother. Something ugly. Something people had worked hard to erase. But the truth had left fingerprints. And he was going to find every single one. Isaiah found himself standing outside a crumbling jailhouse in a small Mississippi town, the sun blazing like it was trying to burn the secrets buried in its walls. He'd followed leads, pieced together whispers from old-timers who remembered a time when fear ruled the streets. As silence was currency, they spoke of a drug sweep that wasn't about drugs at all. It was about control, about sending a message to anyone daring to fight back. His mother was just 19 when they took her, a college student with dreams bigger than the town's narrow view. The files he had showed the rest was staged, a setup to break the spirit of young, black activists who wanted nothing more than freedom, justice, and a future. Isaiah's hands trembled as he read the reports again. They said she was resisting arrest. They said she was combative. They said she fell and hit her head while in custody. The truth one no one wanted to write down was far worse. He learned from an old jailer, now retired and bitter, that Patrice was beaten so badly the night she was taken that she never stood a chance. Bruises hidden beneath hospital gowns, a body too broken to fight back, and yet the official records said nothing of it. Isaiah's voice cracked as he confronted the lies. How could they do this to her, to my mother, his grandmother's? Warning echoed in his mind. Ain't nothing good at the end of it. But here he was, in the middle of it, standing in the ruins of truth. He tracked down the sheriff at his home, an aging man with a face carved from years of hard decisions and colder regrets. The sheriff answered the door without surprise, as if he'd been expecting Isaiah all along. You're the boy, the sheriff said, eyes dull, voice rough, looking for answers that won't change nothing. Isaiah met his gaze. What happened to my mother? Did you know she was innocent? The sheriff laughed, a sound that didn't reach his eyes. Innocent. Son, the law was the law. She was part of the problem back then. We kept order. Isaiah felt a rage rise inside him that nearly knocked him off balance. Order. By beating the girl to death and lying about it? The sheriff's face hardened. She broke the rules. You don't get to rewrite history. That night, Isaiah sat alone in a motel room, the weight of a family's stolen truth pressing down on him. The rage mixed with grief, a storm he hadn't been ready for but couldn't escape. This wasn't just his mother's story. It was his story, his people's story, a story erased, hidden, buried under the weight of silence and lies. Tears came, unbidden but necessary. For the first time, Isaiah let the pain break through the armor he'd worn for years. He whispered into the darkness, I see you now, Mama. I see what they tried to hide. And somewhere in that broken silence, the fight inside him found its spark. They had tried to erase her, to erase him, but the truth had found a way through. Isaiah wasn't done yet. Isaiah stepped off the plane in Atlanta with a weight heavier than any suitcase. The city's skyline looked the same brick buildings, the same crowded streets, but Isaiah didn't. Something inside him had shifted. The truth he'd uncovered wasn't just about his mother. It was everywhere. He walked into his office at the public defender's office. where the hum of fluorescent lights mixed with the murmurs of clients. Waiting for a chance at justice, Isaiah sat at his desk, staring at a case file, but his mind was elsewhere. He remembered the last time he stood before a judge, defending a young black man accused of stealing a car. The evidence was thin, yet the sentence was harsh. Then he thought of the white kid down the block, caught with the same charge, who walked free with a slap on the wrist. The scales of justice weren't balanced. Not really, Isaiah tried to explain. In a way, before differences in representation, mistakes, luck, but now he saw the pattern. The system wasn't broken. It was designed that way, to protect some, to punish others, to silence the truth. He began collecting cases, faces, stories. A mother whose son got life for a drug charge, while a white dealer got probation. A student expelled for speaking out in class, while others ignored. A family forced out of public housing because of red tape no one explained. It wasn't just individual cases. It was a machine slow, grinding, relentless. A machine that fed on fear, prejudice, and silence. Isaiah sat late nights, poring over files, memorizing names. Each one was a thread in the same fabric that had swallowed his mother whole. He thought of Miss Lorraine's warning, but now he understood. Silence only made the pain deeper, the injustice louder. He wanted to fight. But how? The law books didn't have answers for this kind of truth. They were written by those who never lived it. Isaiah knew the courtroom was a battlefield, but it was one he had to fight on. For his mother, for every name he collected, for the future he refused to let be defined by pain and silence. Some days, he'd look in the mirror and see the exhaustion staring back, but beneath it was fire, a fire fed by grief, yes, but also by hope. Hope that change could come if enough people refused to look away. Isaiah wasn't naive. He knew this fight was long, but now, he was awake. And a law, it was never meant for people like them, but that wasn't going to stop him. Isaiah's fingers hovered over the keyboard, heart pounding with every word he typed. This wasn't just another case file. This was his mother's story, the story no one wanted told, the story he carried alone for too long. He wrote it raw, her name, her life, the lies that killed her. He wrote for the silence, for the shadows, for the ones who never got a chance to speak. When he hit publish, he didn't know what to expect, but the response was immediate. The story spread like wildfire, shared, retweeted, talked about in corners of the internet where truth still mattered. Survivors began reaching out, families with similar stories, old classmates from Patrice's college days who remember the protests, the fear, the courage. One woman sent him photographs, black and white images of a young Patrice standing tall in a sea of protest signs, fists raised against injustice. The pictures were proof that she wasn't just a victim, she was a fighter, and they wanted her story told. Isaiah knew then what he had to do. He organized a community forum in a church basement, a place where voices once silenced could finally be heard. The room filled with people young and old, mothers and fathers, activists and neighbors all coming together to say her name out loud. Patrice Williams, they said. Over and over, the name grew louder, stronger, echoing through the walls. It was a prayer, a demand, a declaration that she was not forgotten. Justice wouldn't bring her back. No court ruling, no sentence could undo what was done. But the truth was its own kind of power. It shattered the silence. It forced the world to look. With the community behind him, Isaiah filed a federal complaint to unseal the case. Demanding transparency, the momentum built. The old walls of secrecy began to crack. For the first time, Isaiah felt something he hadn't in years: hope, not just for himself, but for everyone whose stories were buried beneath silence. They were no longer invisible, and their voices were rising. Isaiah sat across from his grandmother in the quiet of her living room. The old clock ticked softly, marking time that felt heavier than usual. For years, the silence between them had been a wall built on grief, fear, and the hope that some things were better left unspoken. But now, after everything, the wall was crumbling. Miss Lorraine looked at Isaiah, her eyes tired but clear. She took a slow breath and finally broke the silence. I stayed quiet all those years, she said, voice low, trembling. I thought, if I said nothing, if I kept the pain inside, maybe I could protect you. Maybe it wouldn't hurt so much. Isaiah's throat tightened. The anger and hurt he carried softened just enough to make room for something else, understanding. But silence, she whispered. It only made you carry it alone. Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached for a faded photograph on the table. A picture of Patrice, young and hopeful, with a smile that never reached Isaiah's own lifetime. She was my daughter, Lorraine said, voice breaking, and I loved her more than anything. But I was scared of what would happen if the world knew the truth. I thought hiding it would keep you safe. I was wrong. Isaiah reached across and took her hand, the weight of years flowing between them in that simple touch. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. Not yet. But it was the start. I'm not whole, he said softly, but I'm freer, because now the world knows her name. Lorraine nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks, and that means everything. Outside, the evening settled like a quiet promise. The fight wasn't over. The scars would always remain, but for the first time, the silence had been broken. And in that breaking, there was hope, messy, fragile, but real. Isaiah stood and looked out the window at the city lights, knowing the long echo of their story would ripple far beyond this moment. It was a story of pain and loss, yes, but also of courage, truth, and the power to be heard, and that was just the beginning.